Oh, snap. We're back. Keep It G Real podcast. Took last week off in the power rankings because we got a handful of the guys on and did a show on, making it halfway through the season. The season's been nothing short of spectacular in terms of how wild the season's been. There's been some teams that have overachieved. There have been teams that have underachieved. They're starting to claw their way back. We already have some teams that are in the basement. And early on, we talk about the teams that are below. I'm going to start to stray away from talking about, for most of the lower teams, their potential to maybe claw back to make a run for, a late playoff spot, and talk about more of what they would probably need going forward, considering they'll be looking into early drafts in the offseason. Some of these teams are going to have cap space. Some of them won't. We'll get into it. Number 32, the Houston Texans. Obviously, the Houston Texans are very bad. I will say that they've been playing everyone really, really tough for the most part. They gave the Giants a pretty tough game last week. The week we just had, sitting here at 1-7 and 1. Obviously, my boy Anton, who comes on the podcast often, thinks Lovie Smith's a one and done. I really don't think he's one and done. But I definitely think Lovie Smith needs to bring in a pretty good offensive coordinator because there's a few pieces on this offense that are solid. Obviously Dameon Pierce, Nico Collins. Who knows if Brandon Cooks will be there. They got some young athletic tight ends. Obviously, they're going to have to build this offensive line. Another big glaring weakness, obviously, is like David Mills is good and all, and he can ball a little bit. He can play. He's not what you're looking for in terms of franchise quarterback. He's definitely a good backup. He can definitely start on some bad teams. Just doesn't have the arm talent and the physical talent you would like at that position. Decently smart, reads the field okay, in my opinion. Just really doesn't have the juice, the timing, and the throwing ability. So obviously, if you're Houston, especially now, build up that offensive line, get yourself a quarterback. You got a young, stud wide receiver, Nico Collins. I feel like at times they don't go to him enough, even though he makes plays a lot of times. They throw him the ball. Obviously, what Dameon Pierce brings. He's, in my opinion, my offensive rookie of the year so far at the midway point. Defensively, they just need to overhaul this defense, get faster on defense, get more talent. They got a lot of old players they need to let go, a lot of draft busts that didn't really, drafts that players they didn't really pan out for them that they drafted, especially along the defensive line and the interior defensive line. I do like Derek Stingley Jr., though. That corner looks like they got a guy that could start with them for them, 5, 6, 7 years. So Houston Texans at 32. Las Vegas Raiders. So I knew they were going to finish last in the division, but I didn't expect them to be this bad. I felt like the one positive of this team was they were going to be explosive and efficient on offense, and they're anything but now. Reduced to running the football all the time. Everyone's like, the Raiders can run the ball. It's like, yeah, it's because they ain't got a fucking choice. The team's injured on both sides of the football, disjointed. I don't know if Daniel Jones is hurt or not, if he's not showing up, but Max Crosby's trying to hold the shit down like a paperweight on defense. Only one guy. A lot of people freak out with there's only a few positions where a guy can really be truly dominant and impact the defense that bad. Pass rusher's one of them, but I don't really think Max Crosby's transformative. They need to build their defensive interior. They need to get better linebackers. Their linebackers are just inefficient and god-awful. They got some young pieces in the defensive backcourt with Hobbs and Trayvon Moehrig, but I just think this team needs to overhaul the offensive line, overhaul the defense. In my opinion, this team's going to be in rebuild mode. I'm curious to see if they get rid of Derek Carr. I guess it would depend on your coach, but Derek Carr is still a fantastic quarterback. He, had better years than he's had worse years, so it's just interesting. But this whole thing just fell apart. Your star wide receiver you brought in don't even want to play there already after fucking 9 games or whatever it is. So, yeah, this team, atrocious on defense, don't have it together offensively. Don't see them making a comeback anytime soon. Las Vegas Raiders at 31. Detroit Lions. Obviously, this is easy for the Detroit Lions. They've been able to score a lot of points at times, but they haven't been really consistent. This is another team that, needs a lot of pieces defensively. Their linebackers need work. Their defensive line needs work. It looks like their draft pick there, the defensive end from Michigan. I'm just so bad. For some reason now in my 30s, I'm just bad with names. Hutchinson. has been a pretty good pick for them. Not crazy in the sack numbers, but he does get decent pressure rate so far as a rookie, really stout against the run. And Jeff Okudah played a lot better in his third season, which he was one of my favorite players coming out of the draft when he came out. Hope he could be their starting lockdown corner guy for the future. But his grades have gone up substantially. So everywhere else on the defense, besides a few positions, they just need guys. Not a lot of people are just running to play in Detroit. Again, they need everything. Probably draft a quarterback too, because Goff isn't the answer there, obviously. Detroit at 30. So Carolina Panthers are interesting in terms of rebuild. So they're probably going to be in rebuild mode. Now, they're not going to have Matt Rule. Who knows who their actual coaches in the future. I keep hearing like Sean Payton's going to play in Carolina. I don't know if he lives, if he's got a home there, if he has family there or whatnot, but he keeps getting linked to him. Personally, if I'm a coach, and I've said this a few times this year, if I'm a coach, I would love to coach this team. First thing I'd do, I would go out and rebuild up this offensive line and get a quarterback in the draft. You're probably not going to entice one of the high-level quarterbacks to come there. You're probably not going to get like a Lamar Jackson. Or maybe you can pull off a trade for like a Derek Carr if he's willing to move. But this team does have talent. They got solid young wide receivers. They have some underrated young tight ends there. Hubbard solid, even though he's injured. And I like a lot of their defensive pieces. I like Burns. I like a lot of their players in the secondary. But their front seven, needs help in the linebacking core, especially on the interior. So this team needs a lot of pieces. But this is a fun team. I don't have Madden yet, but this is one of my Madden rebuild teams right here. Carolina at 29. Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are an interesting one. It's just a team that hasn't gotten good enough quarterback play and O-line play. Obviously, you can always add depth to defenses, but in terms of their defense at a surface level, I do think their corners are a little overrated, but I do like their safeties. I do like some of their linebackers. Not Devin Bush. He's inefficient. Their front seven's solid. Where this team falls short is they can't protect their quarterback. And even if they could protect their quarterbacks really aren't that good. I could see if this team's bad enough, spinning right around and taking another quarterback like the Cardinals did. I don't really think their running back, I forget his name, is all that special. Not that special after first contact or in the open field. Catches a lot of balls, but, you got to be able to be efficient at running the football between the tackles, too. Now, again, offensive line drives most of the rushing unless a running back is extremely exceptional, which he is not. Love the wide receiver core. Love the young tight end. This team is a couple pieces away from being a playoff team, as always, in my opinion. Keep Tomlin. Don't fire him. Pittsburgh 28. Jacksonville Jaguars, they're still in rebuild mode. They started out the gate hot and tough, and they were playing some pretty stingy defense. And a lot of their guys on defense I do like. They got a lot of young kids that fly around, make plays. The football, they're just not efficient enough, not enough experience, not gelled together. They definitely need work on their front seven. I like some of their young defensive backs with Wingard and Cisco. They signed Christian Kirk, who's playing well. They got ETN, who's athletic out of the backfield. I probably wouldn't have traded James Robinson because even though he got hurt, he was still playing well when he came back off like a torn Achilles or whatever he had. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, has played better from the year before. You got to be consistent with him. Doug Peterson knows what he's doing. I do expect this team maybe to go out and get a few more free agents and possibly be competitive next year. But like I did say about this team, I think the amount of money they paid, you should be paying that much money to get players that are transformative in terms of turning your team around. They spent a lot of money and got a little bit better, not to the degree they should have got better with the money they spent. So Jacksonville's still in rebuild mode at 27. New Orleans Saints, similar to the Steelers, this team actually has talent and depth on both sides of the ball. They have a solid offensive line. They have good skilled position players, whether it's through the air or on the ground. They got a pretty good front seven. I think Werner's an underrated linebacker for them. Defensive backs, they got Honey Badger. They have Marshawn Lattimore. I just think if they can add a little more depth on defense and if they get the right guy behind center, this team can be back in the mix and be a playoff team next year. I'd be interested to see. This could be a sneaky team that a quarterback could go to. Like I said, Derek Carr. Who knows what Lamar Jackson's going to do if you sign with the Ravens or not. It would be wild if Lamar Jackson hits free agency. New Orleans at 26. Chicago Bears. So, like I said from the beginning, so I rank this team a little bit higher than the other teams because they're playing pretty good defense through the past handful of games. Love their young defensive players. I love this gentleman right here, Jaquan Brisker. He was one of my favorite players come out of draft this year. Jalen Johnson. They got some young studs on the back end. They need help on the front end. They need help at linebacker, obviously getting rid of Roquan Smith. This team needs to get better in pass protection. But where this team is really ailing really bad right now is their wide receiver core. I know they traded for Chase Claypool, and that'll help a guy who's proven he can be, possibly like a 1 or maybe like probably more like a high B or a low A, which is Darnell Mooney. So I like the contrast between the two. I think that's going to help Chicago going forward. Claypool's a guy who has all of the physical tools, but lacks discipline, doesn't run the best routes. Not that he's not capable, but he just needs to get the experience, do the homework, and actually focus on being a professional instead of what music they're going to play at fucking practice. But I do like the pickup for them. They didn't, give away a lot to get him, and I like the pairing with him at Darnell Mooney. I think it could be a good 1-2 punch if he decides he wants to get together and be the best football player he could be. Chicago, 25. Justin Fields is true. Indianapolis Colts. So a lot of people are pumping the Indianapolis Colts up, and everyone's freaking out because Jeff Saturday comes in and gets his first win. They're like, I told you, Jeff Saturday. Dude, they played the Raiders. Okay, and their wins haven't come against good teams. This team is a weird team because it has talent on both sides of the ball. The offensive line has been banged up. They're missing their best player, arguably, at running back. Even with him, this team would probably be still around 500 team. They maybe have 6 wins, maybe. Again, this team couldn't beat Jacksonville last year, and it's a similar team to get into the playoffs. They got rid of a more explosive and athletic quarterback in terms of like more explosive at this point in his career and arm talent for a dude who has a wet noodle for an arm, even though he's playing okay. Matt Ryan, but it's like a no-brainer. First thing Jeff Saturday said when he came in the locker room was, where's Matt Ryan? He's starting. He's our quarterback. Well, no shit. Sam Ellinger's not good. A lot of dudes, you know what? There's something I want to speak on, too. I love all these dudes that love college football so much, which I could take college football or leave it. I watch it to scout the players to the NFL. But I don't mind college football. One thing that college football has done to do is to talk NFL. Is dudes fall in love so much with some of these college players and can't see oftentimes when that guy's skills isn't going to transfer over to the NFL game. In terms of longevity, like Tim Tebow wasn't that good. He was on a really good team that was really deep, and all they asked him to do was not make a lot of mistakes, and he won a playoff game, and everyone acted like Tim Tebow's the fucking truth. Dude's got like a 4-second time release on his throws and shit. It just wasn't a good quarterback. There was a little bit of that to Sam Ellinger. Like, he played a little good in some preseason games, and everyone friggin' has flashbacks to fucking Texas Longhorns and shit. Like, he's like, the next coming to fucking, I don't know, name a guy that's good. But I think that happens a lot. Dudes are like, oh my God, so-and-so. And it's like, yeah, just because he was solid in college doesn't mean that he's going to be a really good pro. Of course, you go back to Matt Ryan. Colts are still ass. Colts at 24. 23, Cleveland Browns. A lot of people have put Cleveland Browns lower, but this is arguably on paper, in terms of talent and depth across the board, it's arguably like a top 5 roster. I've seen people actually rate these guys pretty high too on like some of these stupid sports analyst talk shows. I think they're forgetting when Watson comes back. Doesn't he come back like week 11 or 12 or some shit against the Texans? This team's not going to be able to catch up. Love the roster. This isn't a team that's in mode build as long as they could bear the cross of having a dude who's a fucking creep, fucking scumbag, like on their team, then this team's probably going to be a playoff team next year if they can keep everything intact. One of the best offensive lines, one of the best running games, one of the best defenses across the board, stack front 7, stack back end, tons of athletes everywhere. Amari Cooper's balling out, and we got young wide receivers that are playing solid. They could probably just go out there and get like one more weapon, maybe draft another wide receiver in the draft with, a full offseason of Deshaun Watson, who's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. This team's going to be good next year. So Cleveland Browns, 23 for now. See if they can hold it together. 22, the Atlanta Falcons. Sometimes it's hard placing these photos with like the fucking font at the bottom. Falcons sitting at 4-6 at 22, down one. They're mostly down one by proxy because I just think all the teams in front of them are better. This is one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And yes, they're fun offensively, but they're inconsistent and inefficient offensively. The only thing they're efficient at is running the football, and everyone's like, oh my God, they run the football so well. And what does that get you? It gets you 4-6 because they're inconsistent at passing the football. Ignore their playmakers. I just feel like if you're this team, like, why are you not just spamming the ball to Kyle Pitts and Drake London? All they do is just fucking run the ball. Now, Mariota can run, and he's ran well. Tried to tell everyone this man right here, Tyler Algier, is a really good running back out of BYU. In the offensive line, in terms of rating across the board, I think they're like ninth in pure run block pro. So, yeah, I mean, they can run the ball on the ground and shit, which, has helped them get into close games with teams. They're 4-6. They're playing better than I thought they would play, but this team definitely does have a ceiling. They're going to give up a lot of points. Mariota's not going to be good in big games. So, Atlanta 22. People probably fucking look at this picture, so fitting for the Los Angeles Rams. I had to put it in there. Who's that? I don't know who that man is. No, it's Allen Robinson with his eyes like, ooh, because he can't believe no one's throwing him the goddamn football because he hasn't done shit. What'd they give him? 3 years, $21 million a pop or some shit like that? Rams down 6, 3-6, just lost Cooper Kupp. This team's in shambles. They're not good offensively or they're not consistent offensively. They're just not good on defense. They lost a lot of pieces on defense, a lot of their depth. This team's playing without some of their best offensive linemen. This team's just injured. They're not on the same page. They lost Cooper Kupp. It's probably over for this team now with losing Cooper Kupp because Allen Robinson can't even get open right now, and he's got arguably the best wide receiver on the other side of the field across from him. Brutal. Los Angeles Rams at 21. Denver at 20. They were at 18, but by proxy because of some of the other teams that got pushed back to, and obviously they're sitting at 3-6. Personally, I think this is a team that, God, if they could just get their fucking play calling and coaching shit woes and get Russ in check, they could probably scrape back and make a run to be competitive down the stretch. But I don't know. I think it's unlikely, especially after losing their best running back, Javonte Williams, a little while back. This team just is not efficient on offense. Not explosive on offense. One thing to this team's credit is they do have a top 10 defense right now, which will bode well going forward in the future because a lot of those guys are under contract for a little while. I didn't like them getting rid of Bradley Chubb, but basically right now Russ is just spamming the ball to this man, Cortland Sutton. He's a good player. Love the player, have him in my fantasy leagues, but offensive line is not playing as well. You lose your best offensive player besides your quarterback. Tough sailing. I just think this team at best, in my opinion, could possibly make it to 500. If they can make it to 500, maybe Nathaniel Hackett might be able to keep his job. But personally, I'd fire Nathaniel Hackett and I'd be like knocking on Sean Payton's door or something. But I've also heard a lot of shit about Russ that makes it so like, man, I don't know if I'd want to be that dude's teammate. A lot of weird shit. I don't feel like getting into it. I'll get into it on the pod. But yeah, Denver 20. New England Patriots, so a lot of people are friggin' busting in their pants over fucking New England sitting at 5-4, but New England's another one of those teams where they're not explosive down the field, inconsistent at quarterback. Yeah, they can run the shit out of the football, and I love Ramondre Stevenson, have him one of my fantasy leagues, probably one of the more underrated players in the league, can run the ball, catch the ball, backfield, block. Where this team really shines, though, is defensively. I picked on them a little bit in the beginning, because I thought a lot of their players are old and slow, and I still believe that. But they're getting such good coverage One of their players is a Jack Jones is grading in the 90s, he's like a 91 grade, and then there's another kid across from him. I don't know who he is. He's only like 26 years old. I don't know his name. Grading out at an 85, and even their slot corners are grading well. The coverage is so good right now on the back end for this team and in the linebacker core that it's really helping this front seven get a better pass rush. So this team's grinding out games. I just still don't think that this play style and their lack of explosiveness offensively and defensively, in my opinion, without good enough quarterback play, enough tested quarterback play, this team, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they're just going to miss out on the playoffs. So interesting to see what Belichick does here. New England 5-4 and 19. Arizona Cardinals. So people probably like, oh, why you got the Cardinals up here at 18 above a few of those teams? They're 4-6. I think as the season goes, I do think this is Kingsbury's last year playing for this team. But I do think once they get a few more games under their belt offensively, I do think this team could go back to clicking on offense. They got James Conner back. They got DeAndre Hopkins back. And I do think offensively, this team has enough pieces and explosive enough for those guys, Rondell Moore and all them, Zach Ertz. I do think that this team can score a lot of points on teams if they can get some continuity and keep building week to week. Where this team could be had is defensively. I do like some of the young defensive players, but a lot of them are inefficient. When your safety has to come up and get 10 tackles a game, your front seven's not efficient. I think their front seven, I think some of their linebackers are okay. I like the coverage skills of Isaiah Simmons, although at the point of attack, he just gets thrown around by a rag doll. I like a rag doll. I've always thought he was more of a box safety. I feel like you could put a more efficient run stopping guy in there, move Baker over to free safety and play Isaiah Simmons at free safety and bring him down to the box to help with tackling. But yeah, this team's front seven is very inefficient. They get pushed around a lot. And I think that's where this team has struggled and been beaten on the ground, sometimes through the air. I could see this team making a run, considering their the way some of the teams in their division have played and some of the teams that people thought were going to be good or down. I could see them making a run and maybe making a run at that 7 seed. So Arizona sit at 4-6. Now's the time. Got to get moving. Number 17, the Washington Commanders. Now remember, some of these have jumped around a lot because I didn't do one last week. So the Commanders have quickly snuck back to 5-5 here. So I wasn't as high on the Commanders as a lot of people, but I did say that the Commanders on paper had 2 things going for them that are very important. Well, 3 things technically. When they're playing to the best of their ability, they're an explosive passing offense. They got the rookie Jahan Dotson. They have Curtis Samuel, can run the ball out of the backfield, catch the ball out of the backfield. You can get him out and into space. He runs okay routes, but he's very explosive. And then obviously you got scary Terry McLaurin, who's one of the best wide receivers in the league right now. And I don't think he gets enough respect because, he's played on this team. Carson Wentz has the ability to make every single throw to make it so this offense can put up a lot of points on people. They just went out and beat the Eagles and put that first loss on the Eagles record. And it was really impressive because the defense really showed up. I loved what I seen out of their defense. Their front seven got pressure. Their young defensive backs played really, really well. And when you look at this team on paper, they should have a really good defense. And they should be able to throw the ball all over everyone. If Carson Wentz can just stay consistent and not make boneheaded decisions, even though that's been his MO throughout his career, if the defense can play the way it played last night, and if Carson Wentz can get these guys going on offense and be a little more consistent on offense, this team could, fight for that 7 seed too. So it was interesting watching them operate last night. And I don't know why I'm talking about Carson Wentz because I think he's injured, but it was Taylor Heineke last night that was tearing it up. Another one of those situations where Taylor Heineke, I think in terms of his arm talent, I think Taylor Heineke's a little underrated. Obviously, not the biggest guy. He's got some wheels on him and stuff like that. I just think he's got to do a good job just being consistent with his reads. Like he made a lot of really impressive throws over the weekend, and that guy's got underrated zip on the ball. And he's he balls out. He plays hard, and I think he definitely's got the respect of that team. I don't know if Wentz comes back, if they'll start Wentz over him. I don't know what Wentz's injury situation is. And I was talking about Wentz, obviously, because he started the year, but now it's Heineke at the helm. So we'll see. Raiders in the driver's seat here at 5-5. Let's see if they can start nipping at these Giants' heels and these Cowboys' heels up here. Giants 7-2, Cowboys 3-6. So let's see. Washington Commanders up to 17, up 5. Okay, so the Green Bay Packers at 4-6, sitting at 16. Obviously, I don't have to talk too much about the Green Bay Packers. I still think they're one of the more talented rosters in the league. They're just not playing like it. Really good defensive personnel. One of the best offensive lines in the league. One of the best running games in the league. They just, haven't been able to gel through the air. As of a little more recently, they've been looking a little bit better through the air. When your quarterback's this good, you just got to be consistent in running your routes and getting to your spots and being cohesive. Rodgers is going to find guys to move the chains. This is a team that I, think will definitely storm back, finish second in their division, and possibly be a playoff team. Green Bay, 16. New York Jets. So the New York Jets fall down 3 by proxy, and I know they are 6-3 and yada, yada, yada. But I just think the teams in front of them are better than them because this team hasn't been pushed as much in a lot of these close games that they've had to where Zach Wilson has to go out there and beat people. This team can run the football. They have a good offensive line, good pass protection, and their defense has played really well. And this gentleman here, C.J. Mosley's been a big catalyst of that. Obviously, Sauce Gardner. I've never seen a rookie come in and grade out as well as he's graded out. I think he's only given up 1 touchdown so far the whole season. Gardner's just absolutely fantastic. 6'3", 200 pounds, 4.4 speed, just blankets dudes. And their front seven, this team's front seven is a little underrated. A lot of it is because they have a lot of depth on the D-line and they rotate guys in and out. But now that C.J. Mosley's healthy, this front seven's decent. Got some decent young pass rushers on it. Sauce Gardner locking down half the field. Defensively, this team's going to be a problem for people. And I use the term problem when it comes to defense very loosely because a lot of times in today's NFL, the best offenses will always beat out a lot of these good defenses. Any defense, no matter how good it is in today's NFL, can get smoked and get torched and beat by an efficient, high-level offense. That's what's been happening the past 5-6 years. We've seen it time and time again. So, defense, talk about defenses a little bit more loosely than I used to. It used to be back in the day, if you had a top 10 defense, your team was an absolute problem. It's not always a guarantee now with everyone being more efficient at passing the ball, being able to get all the way down the field in a fucking millisecond, score, kick a field goal. So, but I love the skill players on this team too. Picked up James Robinson in that trade, like I said earlier, and I love the wide receivers. Garrett Wilson looks like he's definitely going to be the wide receiver of the future for the Jets. We do not know if Zach Wilson's going to be the quarterback of the future for the Jets. So Jets are in a weird spot. This is one of the sneaky teams I'd love to see Lamar Jackson go to if he doesn't sign with the Bucs, because they're going to be in a tough spot. I don't know what the cap space is going to be like next year, but if Wilson ends up not being good, they're going to have to go get a quarterback at free agency. Maybe Carr, maybe Rodgers. I don't think Rodgers would play for the Jets, but, I'd really like to see Rodgers play for the 49ers, but we'll talk about that later. So, Jets at 15. Down 4, the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I still love this football team, and this football team is so competitive, but this football team is just absolutely ravaged with injuries. They're just hurt all along the offensive line. They had 2 of the best tackles in the whole entire NFL coming into this season. They're both injured. They got a lot of injuries on defense. The depth of this team is gone. Keenan Allen hasn't been playing. I think he's slated to come back. And basically, Herbert's been having to hold this team together. Eckler's played really well. And when this team's fully healthy, I love all the pieces. When this team's fully healthy, clicking on all cylinders, I think it's a top 10 team. But as of right now in these current power rankings, I just think that they would struggle against all the teams ahead of them. So Los Angeles Chargers, 14. Staying put at 13, the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans are, a fun team to watch, play football. Love the colors and all that shit. And I love a lot of the players on the team. They're balanced. Their defense is actually on third and fourth down is the best in the league right now, which is something I read earlier. And it shows, when you run this type of balanced team, you're not explosive through the air, your defense is going to have to be consistent. They're going to be getting Tannehill back soon, which they've gone on this little win streak here without Ryan Tannehill, which Tannehill's perfect for this offense. Underrated arm talent, who's very accurate, makes good decisions with the football, and he's athletic. But he's supposed to be coming back soon. I think where this team lacks, and I think where this team's going to get stuck against a lot of the other playoff teams in the AFC is they're not going to be able to play from behind. They're not going to be able to keep up. There's just a lack of explosion and talent through the air. And Tannehill's been known in games where he has to step up and make, more complex, explosive passes down the air. He just shown time and time again when the pressure's on, he just can't make a lot of those big-time throws. So I like this team. They're fun to watch. They're tough for anybody. But they're not going to, make a run or beat a lot of the top-tier teams in the playoffs. They'll probably make it in because they're going to win their division, but Tennessee at 13. Staying put at 12, the New York Giants at 7-2. Where's my notes for the Giants? So, this team, you got to give them their credit for being 7-2. Been able to have a lot of close games. His defense has played better than I think a lot of people thought it was going to play. The offensive line's played a lot better than I think people's going to play than people thought it was going to play. Daniel Jones has played better than I think people thought he would play. But this team can only win one way. They have to slow the game down. They have to keep the ball away from other teams and hope that their defense is consistent enough and they can pound the ball. If you get on them early and you beat them up against the run game, this team doesn't have a lot of options if you could slow the run game down. Like I said, and any team can be scored on, and lately this team has given up some points. His team's also had the third easiest schedule from weeks 1 through 10, and now that it went into the season, straight the schedule could be deceiving. It was third going into the season, and it's panned out that it definitely was the third easiest schedule. Because they haven't beaten a lot of good teams. The 7-2 is very deceiving, and if you look at the odds for their next game, their spread with the Lions really isn't all that big, but yet they're also minus 300 something depending on where you look to make the playoffs, which means their path to victory, they got to play the Giants or they got to play the Lions. There are only tough games left of their in-division games. So I think Vegas knows that this team's going to be a playoff team. I think this team's going to be a playoff team, but it's definitely one of the weaker playoff teams. And when push comes to shove, they just have no juice through the air. Struggled versus the Texans, and if it wasn't for the Texans getting some holding penalties, they could have lost that football game. And I know the Texans play everyone tough, but I'm having fun watching this NFC East. And I think it would be awesome if all four teams got in. I think the Giants are a lock to get in. I don't see them having a meltdown. One thing you can say about the style of gameplay, playing defense and running the football, you're probably not going to have a full-blown meltdown. Like, sure, you're not going to beat the upper echelon teams, but I definitely think the Giants have shown they're going to beat the teams that they're supposed to play, and then be a little bit sneaky. I mean, like they beat the Ravens early on when the Ravens were having their woes and stuff. They have a win over the Texans. They got a couple good wins. I was joking with the guys in the pod. I'd like to see a Giants and the Jets Super Bowl. That'd be fucking awesome, right in fucking Jersey. I'd go to that shit. So, yeah. And for some reason, I didn't put a different player in for the Giants. Oh, well, I mean, Saquon's their best player anyways. I'll switch it next week. But, yeah, Giants at 12. -3, mostly because of proxy, because the teams are better. The teams ahead of them are better. Seahawks playing stingier defense now. Their back end, I think, is pretty good, where they have two solid cornerbacks. I like their middle linebacker, Brooks. He's been pretty good for them this year, pretty efficient. Obviously, this team right now is going as well as Geno goes. The Bucs did a good job slowing their offense down. This team has one of the top 10 offenses in the league. Geno Smith is grading out with an 87 overall. Should win comeback player of the year. This defense can be had, but I do think it's solid. I also think that if Seattle can go on a playoff run, I think there should be some considerations for Geno to possibly be MVP if they go on a playoff run, because this team's not that talented on paper. They're playing just good enough defense in most of their games for Geno and those skill position players to take everyone out. This team, the one thing I will say is this offensive line's played a lot better than it was projected to. They're able to run the ball when they need to, and obviously they can throw the ball over the place, and Geno gets out there, runs the ball with Kenneth Walker. So this is a fucking fun team, man. Seattle 11. Number 10, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Bucs, they're starting to etch their way back. I said this a few weeks ago. The Bucs will storm back and win the division. It's not a hard division to win. A lot of people love the Falcons, but fucking grow up. The Bucs are starting to get healthy. They have depth on both sides of the ball. I mean, their wide receiving core is deep. They got good tight ends and catch the ball. They can block. They can run the football when they need to. In this defense, they probably have the best front seven in football and underrated defensive backs. I just think when this team gets fully healthy and gels, it's one of the best teams in football. Sitting at 5-5 now. I have a feeling they're going to go on a run here down the stretch. I think this team's going to go probably 10-7, win the division and get in the playoffs. I have a sneaking suspicion they'll probably get booted out in the first or second round if they make it in. But, yeah, they still got Tom Brady, who's playing some of his best football, even at the age of 44. So, Tampa Bay at 10. Number 9, the Cincinnati Bengals. So, the Bengals are up 2 mostly because of some of the teams that went back. And now the Bengals are actually in the driver's seat here. Still playing solid, albeit they beat the Panthers. But they're still playing okay without Jamar Chase, and things are afloat. This team still got good skill position players. They're top 5 in scoring offense. Burrow's completing a little over 70% of his passes. He's just accurate, got all the throws, can run when they need him to. Mixon came alive against the Panthers. Not the best run defensive team, but you have to have the ability to run it and throw it when you're supposed to. And obviously the game plan against the Panthers is simple. Come in there and just run the football. They have a nasty defense. Their defense is the 6th best defense in the league. The defense has not a lot of star players on it, but it's well coached. Lou Anarumo, and the team has a lot of depth. They're getting supposedly Jamar Chase is able to practice now. Rumor is he's not going to play against the Steelers this week, and he's eyeing the game next week again, not this weekend, but next weekend against the Chiefs, which love the matchup against the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs can be had on the back end. Should be fireworks, so sleep on the Bengals. See if they can go on a run here. Crucial weekend this week. Crucial game this weekend against Pittsburgh. Cincinnati at 9. Number 8, the Dallas Cowboys. So Dallas Cowboys suffered a loss over the weekend to the Pack. Definitely didn't see that coming because the Pack just haven't been explosive through the air. Out of nowhere, there was a Christian Watson sighting. Ooh, Christian Watson, the best wide receiver ever. Well, he actually caught the fucking football for once. Penalties and play calling, again, hurt the Dallas Cowboys. I agree with Adam that, they got to get themselves a new coach. I thought they needed a new coach back then when they had, what's-his-face? Forget his name, Jason Garrett. But I'd like to see, I've heard rumors about Sean Payton going here. I'd love to see Sean Payton with these skill position players, this offensive line, and this quarterback. Sean Payton likes an accurate quarterback. And yeah, Dak has made some mistakes. He's got to be better, but he's one of the more efficient when he plays the best of his ability and accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. Penalties, a play call hurt them. They're still top 3 in pressure rate. And their wide receivers were definitely off in this last game with their route concepts, not going to the places. Dak made a lot of bad throws because he was anticipating guys to go to the right spot, which I don't know what the fuck that's about, but I feel like if they get a little more continuity in terms of their wide receivers running the proper routes and stuff, if they run when they should run it, throw when they should throw it, I still think this team's really dangerous. All of their DBs' grades have steadily gone up throughout the course of this season. No one can say that Trevon Diggs is like this one-trick interception pony because he's grading out really well this year, playing consistent defense for the most part. Love what their front seven's doing. This team's got a legitimate nasty defense. Really good offensive line still. So, yeah, Dallas at 8. We'll see. Definitely a playoff team. So, up 1, 8-7 San Francisco 49ers. So I talk about a lot of the 49ers. To me, this is the most talented roster in the NFL. They have the number one defense in most statistic categories and most overall in total defense. They're number one. This team's got crazy depth across the board. Wide receiver, running back. They just picked up Christian McCaffrey. They have one of the best offensive lines with the best left tackle and arguably from a grading standpoint, best player in the league in Trent Williams, so you see on the screen. Really good underrated defensive backs, depth at defensive back, gnarly front seven with Fred Warner and all those dudes, fucking Nick Bosa. They just got waves of dudes they can throw at you. It's just the deepest and most explosive and most talented team. Don't even start on skilled positions. McCaffrey, Elijah Moore, Debo, Brandon Ayuk. They got Jennings. They got who's the fullback there? What the fuck's his last name? Their fullback's really good. Kyle Juszczyk. They got one of the best tight ends in the league when he's healthy. One of the best blocking tight ends when he's healthy. I always see his face in my head. I can't remember his name. George Kittle. Like, I could just go on and on. This team's stacked. But, again, this team is one of those teams where it's odd because, in my opinion, they're the best roster. But they definitely have to play a certain style of football to beat you. Obviously, they layer in all their offensive attacks, their runs. This team's the best in the league at yak, at almost 6.5 yak yards per catch. Can Garoppolo be good enough in big instances? Can be consistent enough? Obviously, he's shown he's been consistent enough in just operating the offense. They can win a lot of football games, but it still ends up being the same story most of the time. He's got to step up and be more than that in big games. As good as this offense is, you still have to be clicking on all cylinders for this offense to be efficient enough to beat you with just okay quarterback play. And everyone laughs and goes, Jimmy Garoppolo's 10-2 when he doesn't throw any touchdowns and stuff. But yeah, that's when the offense is like fully clicking. There's going to come a time in every scenario in big games or in playoff games where your dude's going to have to step up and make throws. Do I trust Jimmy Garoppolo to make those throws consistently? No, he's shown time and time again he can't do it in the big games. So love this team, love the talent, love the coaching. They just need to pull the trigger and make the trade for Aaron Rodgers next year. If you're San Francisco and you really think you can get 2 or 3 more good years out of Aaron Rodgers starting next year, you mortgage some draft picks, maybe even a couple players, not too many players, but draft picks, a couple players. You go and get Aaron Rodgers. You trade for that man. He can go play back home where he's from, California. Aaron Rodgers, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Moore, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel. That's a fucking wrap, son. That's a Super Bowl team. San Francisco at 7. Miami Dolphins at 6. Love the Miami Dolphins this year. I liked them coming into the season. Still love them. They're sitting here at 7-3. So Tua's undefeated this year when he plays. One of the most accurate and efficient quarterbacks right now in the NFL. They have depth on both sides of the ball. Their playmakers are absolutely electric. Raheem Mostert's playing well and he's not injured. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's on pace for like 2,100 yards. Waddle's on pace for like 1,600 yards. They got Gilsecki who catches everything in the red zone. And they got depth at the wide receiver position. Offensive line's played a lot better. Got a Pro Bowl left tackle. Picked up Connor Williams for the interior offensive line. This is just one of the best teams in the NFL. Really good coaching, really good play calling. They run the ball efficiently when the team's called upon to run. Love this football team. Don't be surprised if this team makes a push to win the division here down the stretch. Heard it here first. Miami at 6. Baltimore Ravens at number 5. Down 1, mostly because I just think the teams in front of them could beat them 9 times out of 10. 8, 9 times out of 10. This team could beat a lot of teams. So the Baltimore Ravens, obviously you know how much I love Lamar Jackson, underrated thrower of the football. Fun stat, something I read a little while back, or like yesterday. Supposedly they've had 8 straight games over 150 yards on the ground. A lot of that is because of how dynamic Lamar is, the threat of him being able to run or him being able to do RPOs and get the ball down the field, the pass game. The health of this team just needs to improve. They've had some nicks here and there. Picked up Roquan Smith to shore up the interior. I think sometimes this team can be ran on. And when you got a linebacker that's as inefficient as Patrick Queen and some of the other dudes in there, I think that's been a big weakness for them. Adding Roquan Smith with those defensive backs, they get a lot of takeaways. Bringing another guy in there that's just a sideline menace, intelligent, and is great in pass coverage in his own right is really going to help this football team out. Ravens are in the driver's seat here, could definitely win this division if the Bengals, don't get a little streak here going. Just love everything about this team. I just need the offensive weapons to stay healthy. Bateman's good. Duvernay's good. The tight ends are good. They just got to stay healthy. Obviously, they're going to be able to run the ball efficiently on almost anyone. Lamar's dynamic. Thought early on he could be considered for the MVP, but wavered a little bit in consistency. So Baltimore Ravens, number 5, legitimate top 5 team. Number 4, down 3, the Buffalo Bills. Y'all didn't think I was going to go there, huh? Well, we'll see my notes for the Buffalo Bills. So, obviously, this team is one of the best rosters in the team. This team still has a lot of depth, a lot of really good playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Honestly, a lot of this is on Allen, and I don't know if it's because Daboll has left and there hasn't been enough continuity and consistency. A lot of people, and Anton talks about this all the time, is that Daboll was like always this steady force riding the ship. There was a really good quarterback guru keeping Allen in line, but honestly, a lot of their faltering lately, these past 4 weeks, in the games that they've lost, is because Allen's just made some boneheaded plays, and some of the decisions the coaches have made, not kicking field goals at certain times or certain play callings, has made it so this team's dropped a couple games. I'm not one of these people that thinks, oh my God, this team's jumping off a cliff. This is still a Super Bowl contending team. They're still top 5 defensive team. They still have one of the best groups of skill position players. Ran the ball well last week. But they have dipped a little bit in efficiency. And I don't know if it's just because complacency or Allen just trying to do a little bit too much. A lot of people blame that on the running. But if you actually look at the running numbers, they're not inefficient at running the ball, like I've said 1,000 times. They just don't run the ball as much as everyone likes, and Allen gets a bulk of those carries. If I'm in their shoes, I'm not breaking the bank to go get a running back or whatnot. But this team, it's gonna be a pass-first team. I do think that they need to give James Cook the ball a little bit more. I know Singletary's solid and stuff, but I'd like to see them get James Cook the ball a little bit more. Once this team, this team's going to be fully healthy, I think they're going to be getting Tre'Davious White back soon. I'm not worried about this team in terms of their ability to make a deep postseason run. I just hope that Josh Allen could be consistent enough, because he hasn't been as consistent as he was last year and the year before, especially in big spots. So Buffalo at 4. Minnesota Vikings. All them weapons out there, dude. Look at that one. Look at that one right there, dude. Adam will see this shit and barf. I had to put that one up for you there, Tom. Little Adam Thielen action. Vikings winning a lot of close games here at number 3. But lately they've been getting a lot of takeaways, playing just some gritty, tough football on both sides of the ball. Looking like everything's really starting to gel together. I think Cousins could be a little more consistent. Although people talk shit about Kirk Cousins, dude, but he threw a dart to the sideline at double coverage to Justin Jefferson, which pretty much started the ceiling of that football game last week. Kirk can make all the throws. Jefferson's a monster. Defense is a little bit inconsistent for my liking, but they're starting to get a lot of turnovers now, which is really going to help them. See if they can keep that up. It bends, but it doesn't break as often. Obviously, this team's 7-1, and they've really earned it in a division that's usually dominated by the Packers. I do think the Packers are going to come back and make it tough down the stretch, but I do expect Minnesota to win. Let's see if Kirk can keep up playing. He's been playing a little bit better in some of these stressful, tough, close situations. Let's see if he can fucking keep it up. If Kirk Cousins plays the best of it like I know he can, this team can make a Super Bowl run. As long as Kirk stays consistent and the defense stays consistent, stays nasty, I would like to see them get a little more pressure up front. But this team's earned the number 3 spot. Minnesota Vikings at 7-1. Number 2, whatever, everyone's going to freaking hate on it. They've been number 1 multiple times in my power rankings, but I just think there's a team that would beat them. And I think at this point you already know who this team is, but Philly's still absolutely phenomenal. Annoyingly enough, I picked them to lose in the parlay that I had Monday night to the Commanders, and all I needed was A.J. Brown and Terry McLaurin to score touchdowns. I got everything else right, but they just didn't score touchdowns. I would have won $1,000. But this young man is pretty damn good himself, and he scored a touchdown, Devontae Smith. Let's see what my notes are for the Eagles. My notes are super talented. Obviously, they're deep and talented on both sides of the football. I do think at times this team, and it showed against a team that's normally so far this season not that great at running the football, I do think this team can be had on the ground, and depending on the type of who you attack in the secondary, I definitely think this team can be taking advantage of the secondary. They've had a couple close games where they almost lost before. So I think that people are starting to see that it's mostly this team goes as good as this offense goes. Once the offense doesn't put up 30 points, it tends to be a little bit tougher for this team. Plays well with the lead. They got punched in the mouth by this team, struggled with the turnover, struggled to play from behind. It's only one loss. And I also wrote, gave up a pounding on the ground. It's one loss, and like I said, I think that it's good. Going undefeated is not important. I think it's good that this team, got that out of the way, and they could just focus on just being efficient, just being the best team. This loss, you throw it out. You just throw that shit out, and you don't worry about it. You move on. I don't know who they play next week, but I personally still think this team's going to win the division. I know a lot of people are like, oh, the Giants are knocking on the door, and this and that, and Dallas is knocking on the door. I do think this team, though, as a whole, the roster is still just a little bit. Well, I think this roster is a lot better than the Giants, but I also think this roster is still a little bit better than Dallas. Jalen Hurts didn't have his best game, but I still really love this football team. I just seen a couple games earlier where I felt like a loss like this could happen. I basically picked the Commanders because I felt like they had the firepower through the air to do it. And I just thought, man, it would make sense considering how fickle the season's been. But still love this team. This team's going to be making a run for the NFC Championship at the least. Affiliate 2. Number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. You already know I've had the Kansas City Chiefs number 1 a few times in the power rankings as well. I think the only 3 teams that have been number 1 in these power rankings have been Kansas City, the Bills, and the Eagles. The Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league. Andy Reid, one of the greatest coaches of all times. This team's talented on both sides of the ball, and they're so deep with their weapons. Just picked up another guy, Kadarius Toney, to add to that. That's obviously a longevity play, because if he can come in and keep being what they need him to be, maybe he could be one of their solutions long term. I also wrote down this team's basically done 3 rebuilds in like a 5-year period. Rebuilt their offensive line, revamped their team in multiple facets 2 other times, moving from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes, then losing Tyreek Hill. Everyone's like, oh my God. They're doing the same shit with a different coat of paint, just a bunch of different players. And you're truly seeing that Patrick Mahomes didn't need some deep threat to do a lot of the shit he does. Andy Reid takes all these players, puts them in position to succeed, just really layered route running, and Travis Kelce just really opens everything up with how well he navigates zones in the middle of the field. This team, oddly enough, is one of the worst in terms of turnover differential. I think they're like 25th or something like that. But they're still one of the best teams in the league. Like, how crazy is that? That just means like everything else about them is super efficient. My one con on this team is the fact that I do think this team could definitely be had against the high-powered passing teams on the back end. I think the teams like the Vikings, the Bengals, Tampa, any team that can get a consistent, that has a lot of weapons and can consistently get down the field with those weapons, can put up points on this football team. The front seven's gnarly. I just think they're defensive backs. They got some talented young defensive backs, but they're young, they're inconsistent. And I think that's, you have to go toe-to-toe to this team through the air and just beat them in a shootout. If you decide to play the slow, slogging try to keep the offense up. They're just too efficient on offense. You're not going to be able to win that type of game more times than not against this team. So this team's my favorite to come out of the NFC to get to the Super Bowl right now. Obviously, it's power rankings. This changes over time. Let me know what you guys think about these power rankings. I think that I have a couple concepts I'm thinking for a couple other videos. I might make a video what teams that I think could realistically win the Super Bowl. Thinking about putting together a video like that. I'm thinking about having the guys on soon for another podcast, talk about some more video game stuff because people were receptive to that. And we had a lot of fun in that one, talking about video games. I think we're going to actually do more of talking about video games next time instead of talking about, developers and some of our gripes that we have about video games and stuff like that. But it's always good having Kyle on. Like I said, Kyle, 2-time podcast guest of the year. And that's my boy. I love that dude. Always love talking to him. He has just so many little, for as funny as he is, he always has these awesome nuggets of knowledge for, a young man. And I'm proud of him. So, always love having him on the pod. So keep it a G Real podcast. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about the power rankings. I'm out of here. Later.